The lawyer cleared his throat and unfolded the paper like it was something holy. I already felt sick. My brother sat across from me, arms crossed, mouth tilted in that calm, smug way he used whenever he thought he had won. The room smelled like old wood and lemon polish, and every sound felt too loud. "This is the final will and testament," the lawyer said. I barely heard the rest. All I heard was my brother's name, over and over. House, accounts, land, everything. Nothing for me. Not even a sentence. My chest tightened, but I didn't speak. Around us, relatives shifted, whispering. Someone glanced at me with pity. Someone else looked away like my disappointment was embarrassing. My brother finally turned to me. "I guess Dad made his choice," he said softly, like he was doing me a favor. I nodded. I didn't trust my voice, because just 2 weeks earlier, my father had sat at the kitchen table with me, struggling to hold his coffee cup steady, and said, "I've fixed things. What's yours will be protected." That memory burned hotter than the humiliation. As the meeting ended, my brother stood and adjusted his jacket. "No hard feelings," he said. "Business is business." That was the moment I knew something was wrong. My father never treated family like business, and I had exactly 48 hours to prove it. After the lawyer's office emptied, I stayed behind. I watched my brother's car pull away through the window, already dialing someone, already celebrating. Only then did I let my hands shake. The lawyer, Mr. Hale, noticed. "You all right?" he asked. "I think there's been a mistake," I said. He paused. "The will is valid, signed, witnessed, filed." "I know," I replied carefully, "but the timing doesn't make sense." He raised an eyebrow, inviting me to continue. "My father was hospitalized 3 days before the date on that will. He couldn't even hold a pen then." Mr. Hale leaned back in his chair. "Your brother said your father insisted on finishing things privately. That sounds like him speaking, not my father." The lawyer didn't argue. That worried me more than if he had. "There is a legal review window," he said slowly. 48 hours after death in cases involving potential coercion." My pulse spiked. "What do you need?" "Evidence. Medical records, witness statements, anything that suggests your father's intent was different." I thought of the caregiver who stayed nights, the safe behind the study bookshelf, the quiet conversations my brother never heard. "I can get that," I said. Mr. Hale nodded once. "Then don't waste time." As I stood to leave, he added, "If you're wrong, this ends badly for you." I met his eyes. If I'm right, it ends badly for him. I drove straight to my father's house. My brother had already changed the locks, but he'd forgotten something important. He'd forgotten I knew where the spare key was. Inside, the house felt frozen in time. My father's jacket still hung by the door. His reading glasses sat folded on the table. I didn't let myself stop. Grief could wait. I went to the study and pulled the bookshelf forward just enough. The safe was still there. Same model, same code. My hand steadied as I opened it. Inside were documents neatly stacked, old deeds, insurance papers, and a slim blue folder labeled in my father's handwriting, "Personal." I opened it. There it was, a handwritten note dated 1 week after the will my brother presented. It said, "I am worried he is pushing me. If anything changes suddenly, question it." My breath caught. Beneath it was a copy of an earlier will. This one split everything evenly, signed, witnessed, clear. Footsteps sounded behind me. I turned to see my brother in the doorway, smiling too fast. "I thought you'd come snooping," he said. I closed the folder calmly. "I'm just saying goodbye." He laughed. "Careful, this house is mine now." I smiled back, slow and steady. Not for long, I thought. The clock on the wall ticked loudly. 36 hours left. That night, I barely slept. My mind replayed every detail, every word my father had ever said about fairness, about not rewarding greed. By morning, I had a list and a plan. First stop was the hospital. The nurse on duty remembered me immediately. "You're the younger one," she said gently. I nodded. "I need to know if my father was capable of signing legal documents 3 days before he died." Her expression changed. "He was conscious," she said, "but weak. He asked me to read things to him. His hands shook badly." "Did my brother visit?"
She hesitated, then nodded. "Often, alone. I asked if she would be willing to write a statement. She agreed without hesitation. Next was the caregiver. She didn't even let me finish my question before she said, that will didn't sound like him. By afternoon, I had medical notes, written statements, and the blue folder secured in my bag. My phone buzzed, a message from my brother. "We should talk. No need to make this ugly. I didn't reply. Instead, I walked back into Mr. Hale's office before sunset and laid everything on his desk. He read in silence. When he finally looked up, his face was pale. "This changes everything," he said. "Can we stop it?" I asked. He checked the time. "Barely, if we act now." He stood and reached for the phone. "Then do it," I said, because I wasn't asking anymore. The emergency filing went through just before midnight. Mr. Hale moved fast, calling a judge he trusted, submitting evidence, and requesting an immediate suspension of the will. I sat across from him, hands folded, forcing myself to breathe. At 11:47 p.m., his phone buzzed. He answered, listened, then smiled grimly. "The will is frozen," he said. "No assets can be touched until review." Relief hit me so hard I had to grip the chair. But it wasn't over. "The court will allow a corrected will if intent is proven," he continued. "Your father's note helps, so do the witnesses." "How long?" I asked. 24 hours if we're lucky." My brother called as I stepped outside. "What did you do?" he snapped. The calm was gone now. "I protected what Dad wanted," I said. "You think you're smarter than me?" he yelled. "You're going to lose everything." I looked up at the dark sky. "I already lost him," I said quietly. "You're just losing money." He hung up. By the time I reached my car, my phone showed missed calls from relatives, all confused, all worried. I ignored them, because somewhere in a courthouse downtown, the truth was catching up, and in less than 48 hours, the inheritance he stole would no longer be his. I didn't sleep again that night. Every hour felt like a countdown. 48 hours wasn't a long window, but it was enough if I stayed focused. By dawn, I was back at my father's house, making sure the blue folder was secure in my briefcase. Every signature, every date, every witness note had to be perfect. Mr. Hale called. "Judge approved a temporary hearing for the early afternoon. We present your evidence, then the new will can be filed provisionally." "Good," I said, trying to calm the knot in my stomach. We rehearsed the timeline, how my father had been ill, how he expressed concern, how he intended fairness. We practiced answering every question the judge might ask, from my father's handwriting to my brother's coercion attempts. Then the call came I'd been dreading. My brother. His tone was colder than I'd ever heard. "Stop this. You're risking everything. Don't you dare show up at the courthouse." I laughed softly. "I already have, and I'm not stopping." The nurse agreed to come as a witness, traveling across the city at our request. So did the caregiver. Mr. Hale double-checked all documents, then handed me the blue folder. "This is it," he said. I felt the weight of 2 years of family tension and betrayal pressing down. Every word my father had written, every promise he had made, now in my hands. My brother could try to fight it, but he had underestimated 2 things, my persistence and the evidence, and in just a few hours the scales would tip. The courthouse smelled of old wood and polished stone, the kind that made your steps echo. I walked in, holding the folder tightly, nerves buzzing but my spine straight. My brother was already there, leaning against a wall, arms crossed like a soldier. His eyes flicked to me with disbelief. I ignored him. The hearing began. Mr. Hale presented the medical records first, showing my father's incapacity at the time of the contested will. I handed over the witness statements. Each one confirmed what I already knew. My father's true intent had been erased by someone greedy. The judge listened, eyes sharp. He looked at my brother. "You deny coercion?" he asked. My brother stuttered. I only helped him finalize documents. Without intent to mislead." The room went silent. My brother's confident mask cracked. Mr. Hale cut in, presenting the blue folder. "Your Honor, this will is dated before the contested document, signed clearly, witnessed, and represents the decedent's original intent." I watched my brother pale. His hands trembled. He hadn't expected such airtight evidence. His smug smile disappeared completely. For the first time in weeks, I felt a strange calm, because finally the truth was undeniable. The judge called a recess. My brother paced outside, muttering under his breath. I stayed seated, my heart hammering, the folder resting on my lap like a shield.
Mr. Hale leaned over. "He's panicking. That's good. Don't give him any chance to intimidate you." I nodded. Inside, I was shaking, but I forced myself to breathe slowly. When the hearing resumed, Mr. Hale summarized the evidence. The judge examined the blue folder carefully, flipping pages, reading dates, signatures, and notes. He looked up at my brother. "Your conduct appears questionable. Do you have any rebuttal?" My brother opened his mouth, closed it, and finally muttered, I acted in what I thought was best." The judge's gaze hardened. "Your opinion does not override the decedent's intent. Given the evidence presented, the prior will stands." A wave of relief and disbelief hit me. My father's wishes, my inheritance, had been protected. I didn't cheer. I didn't even smile. I just exhaled, feeling the tension leave my shoulders. Mr. Hale gave me a discreet nod. "It's done." I barely registered the words. My brother sank into the nearest chair, pale and furious. He had gambled, and he had lost. Walking out of the courthouse, the city seemed brighter somehow. I clutched the blue folder tightly, aware that every step I took had cost my brother more than he realized. I didn't call anyone. I didn't announce it. This victory was mine alone for now. But the fight had changed him. He wasn't just angry. He was calculating. I remembered my father's words about him. Sometimes he'll try to bend the rules. Watch carefully. That warning had saved me. Back at my father's house, I placed the blue folder in a secure cabinet. Karen would laugh if he knew how careful I was. He'd probably call me paranoid. Maybe I was, but not wrong. That evening, my brother showed up at the house anyway. He knocked, and when I opened the door, he forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I didn't think you had it in you," he said, voice flat. "I did what was right." Calm, collected. That's all that matters. He studied me for a moment. Then, like a storm cloud, he turned and left. I shut the door, leaned against it, and exhaled. 48 hours. 48 hours had been enough. But I knew this wasn't over, not completely. Winning in court didn't erase his ambition or his greed. He would try again. I just had to be ready. The next morning I went through the house, checking my father's accounts, property documents, everything. Even with the court decision, I wanted absolute certainty. My brother's interference had taught me that trust was dangerous without verification. I found a small discrepancy in one account, nothing major, but enough to make me suspicious. I called the bank and confirmed the details with a manager. Everything had been secured. The blue folder had done more than restore fairness. It had created a system that prevented further interference. I sat at the kitchen table, drinking black coffee, staring out the window. My father's favorite garden gnome still sat on the porch, smiling innocently. It felt strange, almost poetic. Karen called. "You okay?" he asked, gently. "Yes," I said, voice steady. "I'm fine." He hesitated. "You don't sound fine." I smiled faintly. "I've never been more fine. Dad's wishes were respected. That's all that matters." "And your brother?" I laughed softly. "He'll learn, eventually." Karen sighed, relieved, but knowing me, worried too. "You're ruthless when it comes to family." I shrugged. "Not ruthless, just careful. And justice? That's smarter than anger." By mid-morning, I had begun planning the next steps, updating legal protections, securing accounts, notifying advisors. My father's estate would remain untouched, no chance for my brother to manipulate it again. And somewhere deep down, I felt a strange satisfaction, not for revenge, but for honor, my father's and mine. The following day, my brother tried a different approach. He called my phone, feigning concern. "Waverly, look, maybe we can talk. Family matters shouldn't go to extremes." I didn't answer, not yet. I knew his words were bait, meant to test my reaction, to gauge how much I feared him or respected him. Instead, I reviewed every document I had collected over the past week. Wills, bank statements, property deeds, notarizations. Everything had been double-checked and backed up. There would be no chance of tampering. My father's intent was secure. By noon, Karen arrived with lunch. "Still brooding?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. "Not brooding, strategizing. He'll keep trying unless we set absolute boundaries." Karen nodded. "You think he'll escalate?" "Maybe, but escalation only works when the other side hesitates. I won't hesitate." We ate in silence for a few minutes, the only sounds the occasional traffic outside and the clink of utensils. Later, I sent Mr. Hale a text. "Prepare for follow-up checks. I want everything documented for the next 6 months." Within 10 minutes, he replied, "Already on it." My brother wasn't done, but he had underestimated me. He thought he could intimidate, manipulate, and steal. Instead, he'd awakened something far more effective: my patience, precision, and determination. By evening, I was certain of one thing. Winning the court battle was half the fight. Securing the estate from further interference would take planning, vigilance, and careful execution. And I was ready. That night I stayed at my father's house. I reviewed the blue folder once more, page by page. Each signature, each date, each witness statement screamed certainty. My father's intentions couldn't be misinterpreted. A knock on the door startled me. I peeked out and saw my brother, hunched and cautious, standing with an envelope in hand. "I brought this," he muttered. I opened the door, taking the envelope but not looking inside. "Leave it on the counter," I said. He hesitated, then nodded and backed away. I closed the door and examined the envelope. Inside was a check, small, symbolic. He hadn't dared touch the real estate or accounts, but this was an attempt of appeasement, a feigned gesture of goodwill. I felt a mix of amusement and disgust. Trying to buy my silence, I whispered to myself. I locked the envelope in a drawer and sent Karen a quick photo. "Symbolic, won't touch the estate." He replied with a thumbs-up emoji and a single word, "Good." I realized something vital. My brother was predictable, greedy, impulsive, arrogant. Those traits could work against him if I remained composed and meticulous. 48 hours had taught me that planning and patience trumped brute force or anger. As I turned off the lights, I felt a rare calm wash over me. The battle had shifted from immediate crisis to long-term vigilance. I wasn't just protecting money, I was protecting family legacy, honor, and truth. And for the first time in months, I slept without fear. The next morning, I received a message from one of my father's old colleagues, Mr. Donovan. "Waverly, I heard about the court. I have some advice. Your brother may try to influence other relatives or advisors. Stay alert." I called him immediately. "What should I do?" He said, "Document everything. Emails, phone calls, visits. Any attempt to manipulate or pressure counts. You need a clear record if things escalate." I thanked him and immediately began setting up a detailed log. I also instructed Mr. Hale to monitor any legal maneuvers my brother might attempt. By the afternoon, I had spreadsheets tracking contacts, timelines, and potential risk points. Karen watched me work, impressed and slightly worried. "You're turning this into a full operation," he remarked. I smiled faintly. "It has to be. He's cunning, and underestimating him could undo everything." By evening, I had an organized strategy. Legal protections, monitoring of all accounts, verification of documents, and surveillance of communications. My brother could try, but he would find every door closed, every opportunity blocked. And deep down, I realized that control wasn't about anger or revenge, it was about foresight. 48 hours had given me the upper hand, but sustaining it would require continuous vigilance, meticulous planning, and most importantly, patience. 2 days later, my brother made his first misstep. He called one of our distant relatives, hoping to gather support for a new claim. I had anticipated this. Mr. Hale intercepted the communication, recording the call and noting all statements. When I confronted my brother with proof, he froze. You can't prove intent," he stammered. "I can," I said calmly, "and I will if needed. Every step you take is being documented." The fear in his eyes was satisfying, but I didn't gloat. My goal wasn't to humiliate him. It was to protect the estate and enforce my father's wishes. That evening, Karen and I discussed next steps. "He's dangerous only if he's underestimated," he said. "Keep doing what you're doing." "I will," I replied. "Patience, precision, proof. That's all I need." And for the first time, I realized the real inheritance wasn't just money, it was strategy, foresight, and the discipline to act decisively when betrayal threatened everything. I slept that night feeling a quiet triumph. 48 hours had passed, the will had been rewritten legally, the estate secured, and my brother's moves anticipated. And yet, I knew vigilance was the key. By the 5th day, my brother had retreated, frustrated but not defeated. I used the lull to strengthen legal protections further. I updated the estate accounts, set multi-factor authentication, and informed trusted advisors of the court decision and security measures. I also reached out to the family lawyer, requesting monthly audits for the next year. Each precaution added another layer of defense. I didn't want surprises. I didn't want mistakes. My brother, unaware of my precautions, assumed he had time. That was his mistake.
Karen stayed close, helping with strategy and keeping me grounded. "You've turned a crisis into a system," he said, proudly. I realized he was right. The inheritance wasn't just secured, it was fortified. 48 hours had been enough to change everything legally, but the work afterward ensured the protection lasted. By nightfall, I sat alone in the study staring at the blue folder. Every signature, every note, every witness statement gleamed with authority. My father's intent was clear. My brother's attempts at deceit had failed. And for the first time, I felt complete clarity and control. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about justice, legacy, and proving that patience and preparation always beat greed and impulsiveness. The following morning, I received an unexpected email from a distant cousin. Subject line, re-inheritance concern. My heart skipped a beat, fearing another attempt by my brother to sway opinions. I opened it cautiously. It was neutral, informative, stating that family members were aware of the court decision and suggested I maintain communication with everyone to avoid misunderstandings. No ulterior motives. Relief washed over me. The network of relatives who might have supported my brother had been neutralized before he could manipulate them. Karen leaned over my shoulder. "See? People respect careful planning and proof. You don't have to yell to be heard." I nodded. He was right. 48 hours taught me the power of precision and preparation. My brother hadn't anticipated the network of legal, familial, and advisory support I had assembled. By afternoon, I arranged a private meeting with my father's old financial advisor, Mr. Linton. I needed confirmation that all accounts, investments, and assets were in order. We went through every ledger, tracing transfers, verifying authorizations, and adding additional safeguards. After 3 hours, Mr. Linton looked at me with approval. "Miss Abrams, your father would be proud. Everything is airtight." A weight lifted off my shoulders. The inheritance was secured, but I also understood something fundamental. This victory wasn't just about money. It was about strategy, foresight, and the discipline to act decisively when betrayal threatened everything. That evening, I locked the office and went home, feeling a quiet satisfaction. The battle was far from over, but the path ahead was now clear. My brother had underestimated me, and that mistake would cost him. A week later, my brother tried another tactic. He showed up at my apartment, feigning casual conversation. "I just wanted to talk. Maybe we can come to an agreement," he said, holding an envelope. I didn't open the door. "Leave it with the concierge," I said, my voice firm. I already knew what it contained. A small token, maybe a bribe, certainly nothing substantive. Karen watched from the couch. He doesn't understand that logic and preparation beat charm. By the time I checked the envelope, it contained only old photographs and a brief note, an attempt to evoke emotion. Family matters should bind us, not divide us. I smiled coldly. Manipulation through sentimentality was predictable.
I placed it in a locked drawer. My father's legacy wasn't up for emotional negotiation. I drafted a brief email to family members. All assets and documents are secured legally. Any attempts to influence or interfere will be documented. Within hours, my brother received word that all his attempts were being monitored. Fear replaced arrogance. He had miscalculated. 48 hours of preparation and legal reinforcement had changed the balance of power. That night, I felt a surge of quiet triumph. The inheritance was safe, my father's intent preserved, and my brother's schemes neutralized. But the lesson was clear. Trust and preparation, not anger or impulse. The next challenge would require vigilance and patience, but I was ready. 2 days later, my brother escalated. He contacted a lawyer claiming he had new evidence to contest the will. I didn't panic. 48 hours of legal fortification and documentation had prepared me for this moment. I consulted Mr. Hale immediately. "Document everything," he said. "He can claim new evidence, but we have counterproof of timelines, signatures, and witnesses." By afternoon, I had compiled a comprehensive defense, notarizations, email confirmations, financial records, and witness statements. My brother's lawyer sent a notice of intent, but it was weak, lacking substance. I reviewed the documents with Karen. "Everything is airtight. He might file a motion, but it will fail." Karen nodded, impressed. "You've turned a moment of crisis into complete control. That's rare." By evening, I received a text from my brother. "Waverly, I didn't expect this. Maybe we can settle. I ignored it. There was no settlement possible when the estate was already legally protected. I had anticipated his every move, prepared countermeasures, and fortified my position. As I sat alone, I realized something crucial. True power lies not in confrontation, but in preparation. 48 hours had taught me that patience, meticulousness, and foresight were mightier than threats or intimidation. The inheritance wasn't just money, it was proof that deliberate action wins over impulsive greed. By the 10th day, my brother's attempts had slowed. He had realized that bluffing, manipulation, or intimidation wouldn't work against someone who anticipated every move. 48 hours had fundamentally shifted the dynamic. I used this period to strengthen my own position further. Meetings with financial advisors, lawyers, and family members ensured no weak points remained. Each asset, document, and account was now double verified and secured. Karen noticed my methodical approach. "You're building not just protection, but authority," he said. "This isn't just about inheritance anymore." I nodded. He was right. The inheritance was merely the catalyst. What I had gained was confidence, clarity, and control over circumstances that once seemed overwhelming. In the evenings, I began journaling each day's events. Recording timelines, communications, and strategies would serve as both legal evidence and a personal reminder of lessons learned. 48 hours had been a turning point, but consistent vigilance would sustain this advantage. When my brother called again, I didn't answer. Each day, his voice grew more hesitant, less confident. He had misjudged me. He had underestimated the power of preparation, foresight, and calm strategy. And as I watched the sun set that night, I realized that securing the inheritance was only the beginning. The real victory was mastering patience, control, and resilience, the true legacy my father had unwittingly left me. By the end of the second week, my brother seemed defeated. He had ceased attempts to manipulate relatives or challenge the will. 48 hours of decisive legal action had escalated into a sustained strategy that protected the estate completely. I met with Mr. Hale to review all measures one last time. "You've done everything possible. The estate is secure and your father's intent is fully honored." Karen squeezed my hand. "You didn't just protect inheritance, you created a system no one can undermine." I smiled. It took patience, precision, and foreseeing every possible move. That evening, I finally relaxed in the quiet of my apartment. No threats, no manipulation, no deceit. The inheritance was protected. My brother's arrogance had been neutralized, not through revenge, but through meticulous planning and calm execution. I reflected on the 48-hour period that had changed everything. What could have been chaos turned into control. What could have been lost turned into strategic victory. And for the first time since my father passed, I felt empowered, not just as an heir, but as a person capable of protecting what mattered most, turning betrayal into opportunity, and mastering patience to secure lasting success. 3 weeks after rewriting the will, an unexpected letter arrived from the bank. My father had a safety deposit box I had completely forgotten about. I opened it under Mr. Hale's supervision, and inside were documents detailing additional assets, investments, properties, and personal effects. Among them, a letter addressed to me. My father had anticipated potential family disputes. "To my dearest Waverly, if circumstances arise where your brother or others try to undermine fairness, I trust you to act wisely. Protect the estate, but protect yourselves first. Your integrity is your greatest inheritance." Tears stung my eyes. 48 hours, frantic decisions, sleepless nights. It all made sense now. My father's foresight had given me the edge, but it was my discipline that turned it into control. Karen squeezed my shoulder. "He planned for you, but you executed flawlessly. That's rare." I nodded. It wasn't just about money. It was about legacy, integrity, and proving to myself that I could face betrayal without losing composure. By evening, I had cataloged every item from the safety deposit box, updating my secure system of accounts and legal files. My brother could no longer claim ignorance or manipulate evidence. The inheritance was fully protected, the intent of my father honored, and the house of cards he tried to build against me finally collapsed. I allowed myself a quiet moment to reflect. Power, I realized, came not from force or anger, but from meticulous preparation, swift execution, and calm resolve. The 48 hours of chaos had transformed into a lifetime of advantage. Despite my brother's defeat, I knew vigilance was essential. He had been clever, and while his attempts were failing, he was still scheming behind closed doors. Karen suggested monitoring communications and maintaining careful documentation. I agreed. Every interaction was logged. Every email, phone call, and meeting was recorded. Any future challenge would face an impenetrable wall of evidence. The first week of monitoring revealed minor attempts, calls from friends and distant relatives, subtly probing for information. I responded through counsel only, maintaining calm professionalism. Each attempt revealed desperation and eroded his credibility further. Then came the final test. My brother attempted to sway a family friend, someone who held influence over one of the properties. I acted quickly, calling the friend personally. I calmly explained the situation, documented proof in hand. By the end of the conversation, the friend assured me they would remain neutral. Karen watched the process, impressed. "Your preparation is your armor. No one can touch you now."
I nodded. He was right. 48 hours of decisive action had evolved into a lasting shield. My brother's attempts had grown weaker each day, and the inheritance, both legal and emotional, was firmly in my hands. 2 months later, the situation had stabilized. My brother had retreated entirely. The rewritten will and comprehensive legal measures had protected every asset. Family gatherings, once tense, became peaceful, with him quietly attending but not challenging anything. Karen and I celebrated quietly at home. "You turned betrayal into a blueprint for victory," he said. I smiled, reflecting on the 48-hour period that had changed everything. Those frantic hours had forced clarity, strategy, and decisive action. The lesson wasn't revenge, but mastery over chaos. Later, I received an email from a distant cousin. Subject line, "Congratulations on your leadership." The message praised my professionalism and composure during the inheritance dispute. My father's legacy, it seemed, had been honored not only legally but socially. For the first time, I felt complete closure. My brother's greed had been neutralized, the inheritance secured, and my father's intentions fully executed. But more importantly, I had learned the value of anticipation, meticulous preparation, and calm under pressure. The 48 hours of intense action had proven that even betrayal could be transformed into opportunity if approached with strategy rather than emotion. By the 3rd month, my brother approached me privately. "Waverly, I want to apologize, truly," he said, avoiding my gaze. I considered him carefully. 48 hours had taught me patience, observation, and the power of measured action. Forgiveness wasn't immediate, it required evidence of change. "I accept your apology, but trust must be earned. You'll need to show through actions, not words, that integrity matters more than greed." He nodded solemnly. For the first time, I saw humility, a willingness to learn from past mistakes. The man who had tried to steal my inheritance now faced the consequences of patience and strategy. Karen, who witnessed the interaction from a distance, whispered, "You've done more than protect assets. You've changed the trajectory of someone's character." I smiled quietly. True victory wasn't destruction. It was correction, transformation, and safeguarding what mattered most. My father's legacy was intact, my brother humbled, and my own strength affirmed. 48 hours of decisive action had turned potential disaster into lasting empowerment. 6 months after the inheritance dispute, life had regained equilibrium. Assets were secure, family relations had normalized, and my father's legacy flourished under careful management. My brother had shown consistent improvement, and while trust was cautious, progress was undeniable. I reflected on the pivotal 48 hours when everything could have collapsed. They had been a storm of decisions, legal maneuvers, and strategic planning. Yet they had taught me lessons far beyond money or property: patience, foresight, and the transformative power of preparation. Karen and I walked through the garden, sunlight filtering through the trees. "Do you ever regret how intense it was?" he asked. I shook my head. No. Those hours changed me. They taught me control, resilience, and clarity. I didn't just protect inheritance, I protected myself. As we reached the fountain, my brother approached. He stopped at a respectful distance. "Thank you for showing me the right way," he said. I nodded. The past was acknowledged, the inheritance was secured, and the future, built on integrity, foresight, and strategic calm, was entirely mine. 48 hours had been enough to change everything, and in that time I had discovered that true power is measured not by wealth, but by the ability to act decisively, stay composed, and turn betrayal into lasting triumph.